I am so excited about this conversation today. And I know I say it all the time, and I always mean it. I'm very easily excitable, but this is really going to be an incredible conversation for anyone who's either in transition, thinking about making a move, thinking about what's next for their careers or their lives. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest, Christopher Williams. But before I do that, if you could pop in the chat where you're joining us from, we'd love to see where everyone's at. We have an international guest today, so I'd love to see where everyone is joining us from as well. And as you do that, I am Debra Boggs. I am CEO of DNS Executive Career Management. And if you're not familiar with us, we are a firm that works with senior leaders, typically VP, C-level, board level leaders, to prepare for, navigate, and land your next big thing. So whatever that is for you. Not a search firm. We don't do placements, but we're like the home stagers to make a luxury property look expensive before it goes on the market. And so while you're telling us where you're joining us from in the chat, we'd love to see where everyone's at. And let's talk a little bit about Christopher. So Christopher and I met because he attended our Pathway to the Boardroom Masterclass as part of the Private Directors Association Prism Conference last month. I guess it's been a couple months. Time flies. It was October, early October. And we really got to talking about a book that he was getting ready to launch. And so I'm really excited to hear more about that today. And while we do that, we've got guests here from Tennessee, London, Minneapolis, Portland, Maine, Indianapolis. Great. Love it. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. So, Christopher, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dig into your book.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Deborah. Thanks for having me on. And hello, everyone who's calling in from around the world. I'm excited that you're here with us today. I was born in Sierra Leone and lived there much of my life until I was about 18 or 19. And then I moved to the US on a scholarship to study at Morehouse College. And I did what most people who travel to the US for school sometimes do, is you end up working to get more practical experience, and then that leads to other things. And for me, what it led to 35 years later is working with some really amazing companies, not just in the US, but around the world. Got married, naturalized, have 2 young kids. And I did, what I was doing for quite a long time until sometime in 2018, when I reached some point of epiphany and decided to step out of the corporate work lifestyle, essentially, and do other things with my time and with my talents. And one thing led to another, but one thing that came out of the period since 2018 was a lot of reflection that led to this book. Started off as notes to myself. Then I thought, wow, this is really important for other people to hear as well. And I ended up turning it into 272 pages, 75,000 words of a book. So yeah, lots of notes to myself. So that's how that happened.
Well, let's talk about your book, because I was lucky enough to be on your pre-launch talk about the book. And one of the things that you said really struck me is that every big turning point in your life was really the result of courage. And I'm probably butchering that, but that's what I took away, because then I started to reflect on that. I've thought a lot about your words since that call. And I found that to be true for myself. And so that's why I was really excited to have this conversation with our audience here. So your book, I've popped it up on the screen, Courage, 7 Choices for Living a Life Without Regret. I love that so deeply. And so tell us, what was, let's dig into that. What do you mean by that? And what is this book about?
Yeah, absolutely. The book came about quite, with just organic process. I had a very good year at work in 2017 and followed up with 2018 with another big, massive project, which was great and exciting for me. But as I dug into the project, I started to have misgivings about the team I was working with, and that essentially made me begin to reflect on my time. Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially what I started to think was, here I am, spending time working with this team, trying to, make this big corporate initiative happen, taking time away from myself, my family, but then the dynamics are not really helpful. They're not healthy. Right. And then you begin to wonder and say, here's the opportunity, because my wife's at home and she's letting me go and my kids are letting me go and go work. But then when I'm doing it, I'm not enjoying it. So I felt I was betraying them to some degree.
Mm,
And that thought process became a bigger one.
yeah.
What about the rest of your life anyway? You're working for a large corporation, you're doing well. What about all of the people and all the communities that you've passed through along the way, that could benefit from your skills and your wisdom and your talents? I mean, what are you doing for them? So that's
Mhm.
how that started. And once I decided that I wanted to make a change, the question was, what would be, what would I bring to people? And for the answer, I looked back at life and said, well, what have I learned from life? And what is the one thing that I've learned that I can sort of say, okay, here's the basic, here's the most basic information and knowledge and foundational insight that I'm bringing to people.
Mhm.
And when I did that, I asked myself, when had I been at my best, and when had I not been at my best, and what had been the reasons? And the answer to both of those questions was courage, either the presence of it or the absence of it. And then
Wow.
as I started to think about all of my pivot points in my career, when I had really accelerated, when I had, made a step change, in every way imaginable, whether it's in learning, it's in responsibility, it's in compensation, always courage had been a factor. It had been something that had driven me to take a big move or to make a big step.
Wow.
And the converse was also true when I felt like I hadn't done well, when I had sort of fallen short of my own expectations and my own skills and abilities. And so that's kind of how it became this idea of courage. I say, wow, that's a powerful insight. And
Yeah.
I probably knew it all along, but I'd never really engaged with the fact, just like you said. And I felt like
Mhm.
I need to amplify this and make this a conversation that we all think about, because I think this is a hidden superpower. And if I had been more aware of it, I would have done more of it. And I said, at the very least, I'm going to put it out there so people have more awareness and can cultivate the ability, the skill, the traits, and hopefully can do amazing things with it, not just in their personal lives, but in the community as well.
So fascinating. I love your point about both the presence and the absence of courage, right? What's happening in your life when courage is present and when it's not. And I think that's
Absolutely.
really interesting to think about. Okay, when are you not leaning on courage, and how is that holding you back in different ways? So let's before we get to, I want to talk a little bit about what you mean by courage as someone's superpower and dig into that a little bit.
Mhm.
Before I do that, thanks so much for joining us. Looks like people in Atlanta, Georgia, Nigeria, Kenya,
Oh, wow.
Paris. It's quite a group. I saw someone
Amazing.
in Amsterdam, which is near where
Okay.
you're at now,
That
located,
is true.
Christopher. So uh,
Wow. You have quite an international network there, Deborah. Amazing.
yes, we do. It's a great group of people. And oh, and Joan. Oh, I'm going to pop her up. We both know Joan
Oh,
Mutzinger.
yeah, I know.
Thanks for joining us, Joan. Well, we
Hello,
met.
Joan.
All three of us met in our Pathway to the
Yeah,
Boardroom
in
cohort
Anaheim
at
a couple of months
CDA.
ago.
And also, shameless plug, if anyone is interested, we're doing a virtual Pathway to the Boardroom launching in January. We have 3 spots left. So if anyone is interested, to pop in the chat and we'll send you more information on that. It begins January 13th, and we have an incredible cohort of senior leaders joining. So I'm really excited about that. So let's talk courage as a superpower. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, to carry on from the last point, it's this small thing that, I mean, if you think about the superheroes, I like Batman. I'm sure everyone has their favorite. They're mostly normal people, but then they have this driven mission. They have this drive. They have this commitment to doing something good. And then when things get crazy, when they're in dire straits or community needs them, then they
Mhm.
go and they pull out this everyone has their secret sauce. They go up behind the back room and they come out with their cloak and their cape, and they go off and do their thing. So I think courage is the same thing. We all have it. We all have it hidden away somewhere.
Mhm.
I think the difference is that we don't always go into that wardrobe or go into the subterranean lair underneath the building and come back with a full cape on. And the idea was for us to understand that we have it, and
Yeah.
then know that we can use it and find the ways to use it to great end. And what I found is that it's something we all own. I think that's what's beautiful about the concept. We have
Mm.
agency over courage. We own it, and when we really understand it and harness it, it's independent of what others think. It's independent of what others can do. Yes, there are pressures and risks, and we can talk about that. But ultimately, the choice is yours, and you have that agency, and that's why I love it, because it has impact. and you have ownership of it. You don't have to go buy it. You just have to focus and master it. And that's why I feel it's a superpower, because it can turn you into a superhero, because you can do things that you can do you couldn't do without courage, or if without using it. So it's a leverage, a small, tiny trait that really has this amazing potential. And I think we all need to do it more.
I love this. We have agency over it. We own it. I love this so much. We just have to call on it when we need it. And I think that's so important. I love this point. And so tell me how courage has shown up in your life, how you were able to change your own circumstances or make a career change or whatever this may mean for you. Give us some examples of what that's looked like for you.
Yeah, I think I'll take two because it's a number that I can talk about.
Of course.
One was when I was 19, and I, as I said earlier, grew up in Sierra Leone, and my parents weren't wealthy people; they were middle class people. But at the same time, middle class wasn't good enough economically in terms of giving your kids the best education that you wanted them to have. And as the country continued to spiral into economic decline, we felt that the only way we could get a good quality education was by, going to school abroad. I mean, but the problem, like I said, we couldn't afford it. And so the only way we could do so was with scholarships. And so I applied for scholarships and never got into schools. And when I did get into schools, I didn't get financial aid. And if I got financial aid, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And this happened 2 years in a row. And I remember the second time it happened, I was sitting with my mom and my dad and my family, and we were looking at partial aid from this school we didn't quite know, Morehouse College. And I said to my mom, well, I can't go because we don't have money, we can afford it. And she said, well, they give you a little bit of money. Let's figure it out. We're going to figure it out. You're going to go. And once you get there, just work hard, study hard. It'll work out. And that was my first time leaving home. So I left home with a suitcase, $25 in my pocket. I arrived in Atlanta, Georgia, with half of the full year's fees, and just worked hard at school, outside of school, paid through my first year. And then after the end of that first year, I was granted full aid by the school to stay for the remaining 3 years.
Oh,
but
wow.
the point I was making, it was something that might not have happened. The risks were there, the uncertainty was high, but that decision to make that choice and let life and let serendipity figure out the rest of the challenge and the problem made a big difference. So that's one. Another is when I decided to leave the corporate world. As I said, was at my most senior role, and ostensibly was looking at bigger roles in C-suites. I was getting headhunter calls and trying to decide how I was going to make a move if that was the case. And then had this epiphany that made me question whether or not I wanted to stay on in the corporate world, and eventually left. And so it's one of those things where you've been working towards this for 30 years. I mean, since I was, a young kid aspiring to be successful in America. And now you kind of close to what it could be the pinnacle of the success. And then you make this decision to walk away. So it's not just a difficult decision for me at that moment. I have a wife, I have kids, but also in terms of the bigger promise I had made to myself for many, many decades, and giving it all up and leaving it behind. And again, it's not a sad story because I was living it to go do things that truly fulfilled me. I was trying to shift from just being professionally successful to also being personally fulfilled, because I was feeling unfulfilled. So that was the goal, and that was the mission. And I think that's the last point I want to make. Courage needs something to work for. Courage works best when you have a clear or compelling goal or motivation or purpose or mission. You can call it what you want, but it has to be something that means a lot to you and means a lot to maybe the community that you serve, that you want to be part of. And that is what makes courage, makes courage have the gravitas that it needs in your life, because that's what you need to counteract the fears, the risks, the naysayers, the trepidation, and all the elements that come along with taking on newness. So if you don't have that aspiration to counteract it, it's really hard to really get that over that hump. So the very first chapter in the book is about purpose. And I think that's why that's necessary, because without purpose and without something with courage to work for, you can't really muster, the full breath of courage that is deep within all of us.
This is so important. I love this point, and I'm going to pop it up because Michelle put it in the chat as well to just reiterate what you said. Courage needs something to work towards. That's so important. And I love your point also about, not just working past the hard parts and everything else, but the naysayers. It's not just internally when we need to have courage. It's the external forces as well. And I know even in my own career, the biggest changes I've been able to make, even in launching my firm, which turns 10 in 2026.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I left a VP level role to start this, and I can't imagine the kind of courage it took then. Had 2 young kids and a husband who was sick at the time, but now I can't imagine doing it differently. But the naysayers at the time, that's hard. That, I'll never forget hearing things like, oh, you'll never be able to charge more than $30 an hour.
Yeah.
No one's going to pay for that. You can't make a full-time job. Why would you leave your good job for this? You have, you have stability here, and you've got kids and all of these things. And I say this to say, it takes courage to stand up and say, no, I'm going to believe in myself. And I know that something good is going to come out of it, and I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
And I know that a lot of our clients and our listeners and our audience feel this way too. When there's time in your career where you're not being fulfilled, you're not working towards something that you feel is aligned with who you are or what your family needs, and making that leap can be really hard. So real quick, for anyone just joining us, we are speaking with Christopher Williams, and he is the author of Courage: 7 Choices for Living a Life Without Regret. So you can pick this book up on Amazon. We'll pop the link in the chat. But Christopher is really telling us about all the ways that courage can impact your life and how it's something that you can call on to make big changes. So tell us, you said there's 7 choices. Tell us a little bit about what some of those choices are.
Yeah, so I use the word courage to capture them, and so that I can remember them, and hopefully others can remember them as well. And the very first one, as I said, is about purpose, and to be more specific, commit to a purpose.
Yeah.
And the idea, as I said, is to create something that courage can work for. And then as you've done that, it's also important to own your potential. So this purpose sets you up for a series of actions, and hopefully they all lead to some element of you becoming. And you got to own that. You got to take agency for that. It's not enough to have a goal and aspiration, but if you don't get into the driver's seat of making it come to life, if you don't see yourself as the primary actor to bring it to life, it actually you begin to defeat yourself almost immediately. So the second is own your potential, and that's claiming agency, being entitled to that aspiration, as long as it's not happening at the expense of other people. It's about you becoming, you're entitled to it. The third is managing fear, unmask fear. And the simple message I have here is fear is a powerful, powerful emotion, and it shows up all the time, announced, invited and uninvited, announced or unannounced. It just sneaks in and sits down. And so you can't fight it. Fear is going to come in and just sit down, and you just say, hey, fear, good morning. How are you doing? What's your message today? And most times the message is, oh, don't do it. Oh my God, this is too bad, too strong, too fast. But fear is only a signal. Fear is only an indication that you're entering new territory. You're taking on something that you might not have done before. It's a signal. It doesn't stop you. It shouldn't stop you. It's not a stop sign. It's not a compelling, hey, take a detour, go back the other way. No, you might feel that's what it's saying, but it's only signaling to you. So I talk in the book about how you engage fear so that you take it into consideration, but you don't let it drive your decisions. The fourth is the one you talked about earlier, which is how you manage society. And that's the R, reject distracting voices. Aristotle talks about ignore the mob.
Yes.
And these voices come from within you, as you rightly alluded to, and they could come from outside as well.
Yeah.
But these voices are very potent. And what's sometimes important to remember is that they could be well-meaning. They could be from family. They could be from friends, people who care for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying do not entertain all of these perspectives. Listen to them and entertain them, but know which ones you accept and shape your decisions, and know which ones you say no to. And that's really important because
That
that's,
is
I think, it's one of the
incredible.
hardest ones to overcome. Go ahead, sorry.
It is. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just, before we move to another one, I want to push on this, especially for our audience who's either in a career transition, thinking about making a change. This one's the hardest one, is we hear, well-meaning from friends, family, spouse, why is your job search taking so long? You have great experience. You should be able to get a job anywhere. Oh, why are you trying for that level of job? You should just go work for XYZ and just get back to work. All of these things that, like you said, well-meaning, but can detract you, and they may not understand where you're headed. And we also have to keep in mind where their advice is coming from. Is it their own
From their own
fears?
fears sometimes.
Exactly. And so I think that this is such an important one because it's really hard for people in a job search, and especially at the holidays when we're visiting our family, and it's all well-meaning, but it can be tough, and especially if you're in a tough transition. So I'd love to just push on that a little bit because it's so incredibly important.
Absolutely. And to just throw one more point in there, I think it's important, therefore, that we understand the first two choices, the one
Yeah.
around your purpose and the one about, owning, taking agency, because it's important for those to be very deeply felt and very real and very authentic and to be
Yeah.
coming from you. Because I think that depth of conviction is really, really helpful as you're now trying to navigate all of the different voices and all the perspectives that you're hearing. If you are chasing something in service of someone else's goals, rightly so, that's not courage. You probably headed towards something that sounds like recklessness, and you
Right.
need to pull that back and make it be something that's authentic to who you are and what you're trying to achieve for yourself. And I think that gives you a lot more foundation to then engage all the different perspectives that you'll be receiving. And nothing really happens until you act. And so that's another one. So we can have all the plans, you can have all the aspirations, but you have to take a step. You have to start. You have to start the process. And sometimes, if you're like me, you're perfectionist. You want to see the entire path laid out. You know exactly what you're going to do before you take the first step.
Yep.
And then you never get to perfection. So what does that mean? You never take the first step. So you got to understand, okay, I know what my North Star is. I know enough to start the conversation and to come back and talk about the people that you're surrounded with, because they're positive supporters as well, who will be there with you, who you can bounce ideas off. So have some courage to take that first step, because that's important for you to get in the game. Because if you never take the first step, then it's all just theory.
This is such a good point. We see so many people. So for our candidates, our clients that we work with, we do certainly resume, LinkedIn profiles, they're starting to search, but also that search strategy. Who are they going to reach out to? What are they going to say? What are those conversations going to look like? How are they reaching out to their network? But some people like to get stuck in that of planning to plan and not just reaching out to real humans and having those conversations.
Absolutely.
And sometimes
analysis paralysis.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes you just need the push to get out there and do the thing. And you can make adjustments as you go, right? We're always adjusting and changing. And this is one of those things you have to start to get there, and then you can make adjustments from there.
Absolutely. And once you make that step, you're putting yourself out there, and then people see you. People are aware of what you're trying to do. And you're very likely going to create supporters. You're going to create new cheerleaders who are not only going to help you take the second step, perhaps the third and the fourth and the fifth step, but you might have been very invisible to them without that first step. So that first step creates more visibility for you and also creates more new perspective. Because in the first step, you can see things differently than in the zeros in the step before that one. And in the third or fourth step, you can see more things than in the first step. So the perspective is always changing. It's like walking. When I was at the top of the hill, I can see the valley, but down in the valley, I couldn't see the top of the hill. So the steps actually change perspective. And then following that is, now you are going to expose yourself. Now you're in the game. Now you're going to make mistakes. And you can turn tail and run. And go back to all those naysayers and says, you were right, I shouldn't have done that. Or you can learn from your mistakes. So that's what we get to growing from failure. Mistakes will happen. And the word fail is actually an interesting one, because I don't think you're truly failing unless you're not learning. If you're making mistakes and learning and course correcting and getting better and getting sharper in your approach and your approaches, you're actually doing well. You're learning, and that's really important. That's the value of failure. It's to learn. It's not to stop and turn tail. And then the last is, this notion of resilience. All of these elements are going to always be swirling around you, and you're going to have good days and bad days. And so you have to just realize that, I am in this process. I am making this move. I'm making this change in service of this aspiration. And I'm going to be resilient. So go from resilience and continue to do the things that empower you, the things that, reinforce, the clarity that you have, that reinforce you with confidence. And again, so making selective choices about who your tribe is, who you're listening to, all come into play, because the more negative thoughts you are surrounded by, maybe the less resilient you become. And you need the constant support and the constant encouragement. So that's it in a nutshell. Courage. And we go through those 7 choices, all of which add in different ways to this bigger toolkit, this bigger skill. And that makes you begin to appear and actually truly be courageous in your choice making.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so interesting. Yes, the skill, we have to be leaning on this muscle, right, to grow it. And so again, for those of you just joining us or joined us halfway through, our guest is Christopher Williams, and he is the author of Courage: 7 Choices for Living a Life Without Regret. It's absolutely fascinating and incredibly impactful book, really helping you think through the ways that courage can change your life and the ways that you can call on courage to make those big choices and make those big changes. So thrilled to talk to you. And I know we talked a little bit about offline, much of this audience are either career changers, people in transition, executives thinking about what's next for them. And then certainly you and I met in our Pathway to the Boardroom course, so there's a lot of people here that are looking for board careers. Tell us, what is maybe a tip that you have for this audience as they're thinking about maybe a big transition?
Yeah, I think, one thing the place that I got to right before I started writing the book in the 2018-2019 timeframe was pausing autopilot. And autopilot is a thing that gets us out of bed, we brush our teeth, we put on our nice clothes, we go and we work, and then, we come back home and we're tired and we, drink some tea or glass of wine and go to bed and wake up, and then we just do that again and again.
Yeah.
And it works for us because it has results and it has predictability and it has stability.
And there's safety in that.
Yeah, and to be an autopilot, you sometimes suspend the things that you're truly interested in, or the things that you're passionate about, or you don't seek or pursue the things that you're developing an interest in. Maybe the thing that you're working on is not exciting you as much as it did, but it's now become a routine. But you don't want to change that routine, so you stay in that mode. And 1 year could become, a few months could become, a few months could become a year, and then 2 years and 3 years, and then a decade later, you're in this situation. And I think that's kind of where I got to. And I think many people sometimes find themselves. So at some point, and I understand that life happens. We have choices, we have bills, we have kids, we have family, and we have to balance all of those things. So I'm not trying to poo-poo all of those really important considerations.
Right.
But we create success, and we have to begin to ask ourselves, what is that in aid of? What is the goal? Is success the goal itself, or is success an enabler for other things? So you have to keep checking in with yourself. I guess it's a point I'm trying to make. Keep checking with yourself to make sure you don't stay in autopilot. When have you reached the milestones that you had set for yourself that give you more freedom, more capacity to do other things, to make other choices? And when you get to that point, don't double down into the things that you're doing that you might not have been enjoying. Take some time to check in, whether it's once a year, whether it's a couple of times a year. I think that's important to get off autopilot. And then once you get to that point and you realize that, okay, it's time for change, it's really not allowing yourself to postpone or procrastinate what is a choice that you need to make. One of the things that really shook me when I started to research this book was research that led me, I won't tell you how it led me there, but it led me to a book called The Top Regrets of the Dying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, I got there. I don't. Again, long story how I got there, but I got there. And Bronnie Ware, who's a palliative caregiver, I think she's Australian, had written a book many years ago, and essentially she had spent a decade or so asking her patients, what they were most regretful of, and she compiled all of these answers into a book. And the number one regret was, I wish I'd had the courage to do what was true to me versus what others wanted me to do, something to that effect.
Wow.
And that's real. And so this is thousands of patients later,
Yeah.
all sort of getting to this point, and that's what her summation of those interviews was. And I think that's the danger of autopilot. You just stay in this mode, and we do it because we were all the right reasons.
Right.
But then we ended up getting to the point where, as successful as we've become in life, sometimes we look back and we feel like we could have gotten off autopilot. We could have done other things. So one challenge I give to myself, and I will share with everyone on the call today, is keep checking with yourself to know when you're on autopilot, and more importantly, when you can get off and when you should get off, and then start the process then of really trying to figure out what those steps are, and always get to the point where you can take the first step out.
So important. Yeah, when you can and when you should get off. So important. So many people spend too long, and they say they look up and a decade has gone by. And this happens in our work all the time. People will call and say, I should have left 6 years ago, but here I am now. And now, my career is stagnated, and it's really time to make a change. So this was so incredibly powerful. I could talk to you all day about this. Unfortunately, we've hit the top of the...
oh, really? That was fast.
It's so fast. It's so fast every single time. And I think that we could really dig into this all day long. But we have put the link to Christopher's book in the chat. Blessing on our team will add it to the chat one more time for anyone who wants to reach out, and then also reach out to Christopher and follow him. He's got a lot of really great content around this, certainly. And then also, for anyone interested in our upcoming Pathway to the Boardroom virtual masterclass beginning on January 13th, we do have a few spots left, and I'd love to see you there. So there's a link to that in the chat as well. Thank you so much for Christopher for joining us. I really appreciate this. And I'm really going to be thinking a lot about this book over the holiday as I spend some time doing some reflection as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining on.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.